In this lesson, we are going on speaking about tenses, and today's tense is past simple. Lots of the times you need to speak about something that happened in the past, so this is the tense that you will normally need. So let's look at this slide. Here you can see a lot of examples, the main formation of this tense, and some additional information. So let's look at this tense more closely. Past simple is mostly used with actions that happen in the past, obviously, but also you have to remember that this is the tense that we used for finished actions, something that was finished in the past. Usually you also have these little marks of a certain time in the past, like the word yesterday, or last week, last month, last year, things like that. Let's look at the examples. I implemented this function yesterday. Implemented this function. So as you can see, the main verb of the sentence gets this ending, ed, with the positive sentences. Let's look at the negative one. I didn't implement this function yesterday. Again, you see that the main verb remains the same. You don't add anything here. But you have an auxiliary verb used in this sentence, which is did, with the part not. So as you can see here, didn't is actually did not together. And the question is, did you implement this function? Did you implement? So again, you use the auxiliary verb, which is put at the beginning of the sentence. Okay, let's look at the other couple of examples. He wrote this code in Eclipse. What can you see here? No ed is added. Why? Because this is an irregular verb. You see that past simple is formed with the verb plus ed, or if it's an irregular verb, you take the second column of those irregular verbs. As you know, verbs can be regular and irregular. So for past simple, you use the second column of irregular verbs. In resources to this lesson, you will have the list of most common irregular verbs, so you can go through them and revise and learn if you don't know them. So he wrote this code in Eclipse. He didn't write this code in Eclipse. How did he write this code? So as you can see here, just in the positive sentence, you will need to take the second column of irregular verbs. In all the other types, you use the same structure again. Yeah, so he didn't write and did he write. You can look here and you can see how these things change in the past. Like didn't is did not, wasn't is was not, weren't were not. And now with regular verbs, when you add ed to the verb, sometimes you need to change little things in the verbs, like the last letter in the word or whatever. So let's see, if you have the word carry, which ends in the letter Y, then the past form will be carried, and pay attention to this change. So actually what happens here is letter Y changes into I, and then you add ed. Sorry for my drawings. So this is what happens here. But you have to remember a very important rule here, that this happens only if you have a consonant letter before Y. It doesn't work for vowels like A, O, I, E, and so on. If the letter Y goes after a vowel, nothing is changed here. The letter Y is left the same, and you just add ed to the end of the word, right? So remember about this rule. When you have a consonant here, like letter R or letter, I don't know, P, T, whatever, the consonant letter, then you change Y into I and add ed to the end of the sentence. And also, when the verb finishes with a consonant, sometimes you have to double the final consonant, like in this example, stop, stopped. When does it happen? Usually it happens when you have this thing at the end of the word. For example, the word stop, right? It has this thing. The end of the word consists of a consonant, then a vowel, and then a consonant again, which is sometimes called CVC. Yeah, so consonant letters like T, P, B, M, N, G, whatever, like consonant. And then the vowel is O, A, E, I, and so on. So when the verb finishes with this structure, CVC, consonant, vowel, consonant, like the word stop, you have to add an additional consonant at the end of the word, and after that you have to add ed. So this is what happens with this word stop, stopped here. Good, so let's look at the rules again. For most verbs, we just add ed in past simple, use did for questions and didn't for negatives. Some words change their form, and these words are irregular verbs. Okay, so this is what happens with just verbs, right? But sometimes we need to use the verb to be, which has its own forms. And the past forms of to be are was and were, just two forms. For singular, it's was, and for plural, it's were. So let's see. Sentences with was, were are different. Look at the examples here. He was at work yesterday. He wasn't at work yesterday. Were they at work yesterday? So you see that was, wasn't, and were they are used just by themselves. Nothing is added. You don't use did or didn't with those sentences. Just change be into the relative form. And you see that was goes for singular and where goes for plural, right? So you say, I was at work, he was at work, she was at work, it was at work, and then we were, you were, and they were. Okay, and there are a couple of things to remember not to do when you use past simple. So don't say didn't and then also adding ed to the end of the verb, right? Because didn't already shows that this is the past, so you don't need to add ed here. Yeah, you have to say didn't implement without ed, and also did you, and don't use the past form of irregular verbs. Use the present form when you have did, because did is something that shows the past, so you don't need to show that past tense later on in the sentence. Did you write should be the correct variant. Don't use did with was, where. We've covered that here. Was, where, just like that, forming all of the sentences. And don't say you, was, because you is plural. No matter if you speak to one person or a couple of people, you should use the plural form, which is where. You were. What is the most important thing to remember is that the past simple is the tense that is used for actions in the past, finished actions in the past. Something that happened yesterday, last week, last year, whatever, but the action is finished, and usually you specify the time when it happened, or you understand that time. You understand when the action happened. About the formation of this tense, once again, you add ed to the main verb in the sentence if it's a regular verb. If it's an irregular verb, like write, wrote, written, read, 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 do, did, done, and so on, you use the second form, the second column of irregular verbs. All right, and for negative sentences and questions, you have to add did with most of the verbs, but if you have the verb to be, you don't add did, you just change the verb into one of two variants, which is was or were. Okay, so let's move to the exercise. All right, so now you have an exercise. You have to complete the sentences with the past simple of the verbs. You see the verbs are given in brackets at the end of each sentence. So look at the sentence, read it to yourself, and try to decide what goes into the gap. I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about it, and then the answer will appear in the gap. If you feel that you need more time, you can stop the video, think about the sentence, and then resume the video again. So number 1. And the answer is, I bought a new laptop yesterday. The verb buy is an irregular verb, which you should know. If you don't know this word, it's not a problem. You can go to resources after this lesson, download the resource file with irregular verbs, and just look through it and revise all the verbs that you need. So I bought a new laptop yesterday. Number 2. And the answer is, what number did you assign to the age variable? Did you assign, because this is a question. With questions, we have to use an auxiliary verb did, the word did, to form a question. Number 3. This is a negative sentence. So you have to make a negative verb in past simple. And the answer is, in the past, this program didn't run on mobile devices. Again, didn't run because this is a negative sentence. You add did with not, which is didn't together. Didn't run, and the word run is actually an irregular verb. Run, ran, run. But you use the first form because you have did in this sentence. Number 4. And I hope you remember how be changes in the past simple. So the answer is, was he in a meeting last Friday? Was he? Number 5. Carry out is a nice verb because something has to be changed in this verb. In my previous job, I carried out the responsibilities of a team leader. So pay attention to the word carried. In past simple, you see that the letter Y at the end of the word carry changes into I, and only then you add ed. This is the spelling rule that you have to remember. Number 6. We weren't ready for a visit from the client. We weren't ready. Number 7. This is a question again, and the answer is, did you write the function to compare prices? And number 8. I didn't register on this website, but I can use it. So this is it. I hope you were correct with all of the sentences. It's not a big deal if you had a couple of mistakes. You can go over the theoretical material once again if you need. Also, after the lesson, you have resources, you have worksheets and answer sheets, so you can do the exercises. You revise the vocabulary because the exercises are based on the vocabulary that you've learned in the first part of the course. So go download the worksheets, do them, and see you in the next lesson.